Welcome to the video. In this one, I'm going to talk about candle pricing, how to price your candles correctly so you don't lose money. This is a big thing, especially in the beginning when you're starting your sort of candle making journey. It's really easy to get carried away with just making the best thing you can possibly make and not thinking about the costings. Therefore, you might make a candle which looks really good, smells really good, but it's just losing you money. So I'm going to go over a few basics that I sort of wish I knew in the beginning. And it's a few things I've also learned from my chefing. So in order to make money in the restaurant, we need to cost our ingredients and our dishes properly. Otherwise, we lose money and then the boss gets angry. So we're going to jump to my shared screen and I'll just go through 4 points. So how to price your candles correctly. First, you need to find the right suppliers. Secondly, you need to get backup suppliers. Then we need to go, thirdly, cost of goods. And then how to price your candles correctly, how I price my candles anyway. So we'll go through all these bits. So the first thing is finding the right suppliers. Now, in the beginning, what I did is I went through all the candle making suppliers, and these are a really good place to start, but they can be quite expensive. There's some of the most popular ones, Candle Shack, Supplies for Candles, scents, soaps and things, and there's loads of them. A lot of the stuff on there can be quite expensive, especially the containers, like the glass jars used for candles, or like concrete jars, or any kind of jar can be quite expensive. What I found useful in the beginning was to just think outside the box a little bit and see where I could maybe get some other supplies. So things like eBay, Amazon, there's wholesale supplies, there's bits like Freeman Harding which sell like beekeeping supplies, but they've got loads of jars on there quite cheap. There's Bottle Jar Store which sell sort of wholesale, different types of jars, different bottles, all sorts of things on there. There's Coloured Bottles, World of Bottles, Love Jars. There's so many different places where you can have a look and find different types of jars, and these places you can generally get them a little bit cheaper than the top candle websites. So it's worth just spending a bit of time looking on different websites, trying to find a container that suits what you want to make, but is also cheaper than maybe what you might buy on something like Candle Shack or Supplies for Candles, because they do buy them in bulk, I assume, from like Alibaba or China, and then add a little bit of premium on them. So you could be looking at £2 to £3 for a jar, and then maybe another £1.50 for a lid. So that's about £4.50 before you've even started putting wax or wicks in it. So it's prudent to look around and to reduce your costs as much as possible first. With that said, these candle supply websites are really the only places you can get wicks and waxes from, but it's also worth looking around different websites for different waxes and different things. So for instance, I buy a lot of my wax from Candle Shack, but I can also get one of the waxes I buy a little bit cheaper from Northern Ireland candle supplies, but they do take a little bit longer to deliver here because it is from Northern Ireland. But I don't mind because I save, what do I save? About £20 on each 25 kilos of wax. So that adds up quite a big difference, especially when we get to our costings. So it's useful to look around, shop around, and find lots of different places where you can get the same things. Because sometimes I've had in the past when I settle on like a recipe, I settle on the containers, I settle on the jars, it's gone out of stock, especially this time of year, especially around autumn, Christmas. It goes mad with candle season. So you want to make sure you've got some backup supplies, even if they're a little bit more expensive. Just make sure you've got 1, 2, 3 places ideally that you can buy your stuff from. This just saves any headaches. Trust me, I've been through all of it. I've sort of relied on places where I thought I could get the one thing and I could get it all the time, and then boom, they're out of stock. And that is my whole business ruined until they restock it. So you need to really just have some good backup options. So yeah, get a good list of suppliers. It's important and it's imperative to find the lowest cost ingredients and materials for your chosen candles with backups in case your primary stock or supplier goes out of stock. So that's kind of the first part. Shop around, look around, think outside the box, find places where you might not necessarily get candle supplies from, but you can get jars and adhesives and things like that. So the same applies for boxes actually. A lot of the boxes you buy on the candle making websites are quite expensive. You can get them cheaper in wholesale places. There's Kite Packaging in the UK. There's Alibaba if you want. I've not used Alibaba because of the shipping times, but it's something I'll probably look into the future as my business scales and I need to get things a little bit cheaper. At the moment, I'm not in that position yet. I can't quite justify the cost and the wait time. So I'm doing lots of stuff, little and local. So the next thing is cost of goods. This is the most crucial part. So So we've got our suppliers, we know where we're going to get everything from. Now we need to cost it. So we need to cost everything. And I mean literally everything. After I've worked out the cost of the candle, by breaking it down, we're going to go through each thing, how much wax we're going to use in each candle. So for me, I think it's 125 pounds to 25 kilos of wax. I need to work out how many candles I can get out of that. I think off the top of my head, it's about 90 candles. And that works out at about, I can't remember exactly, £2 to £2.50 per candle in just terms of wax. Then we need to work out the wicks. The cost of each wick that goes into the candle, I think for me it's about 5 to 10p. The fragrance oil that goes into each candle, each one varies because different fragrance oils are different prices. So the cheapest I get per litre is about 30 quid, which is super cheap. And the most expensive one I've used in the past is about £80 a litre, which is a bit too expensive for me. I've tried to reduce that down. But we need to work it out. So for each 250ml candle, I'm putting in 25 mils of fragrance oil, which is 10%. So that works out at roughly between 90p to £1.50, depending on what fragrance oil I've got. So you need to add all these bits together. And then a little bit of glue that goes into the bottom to hold your wick down, all those wickums or sort of wick dots. You need to work out roughly what that's going to be. You need to work out the stickers. So the sticker on the top of your candle, I've got stickers on the top as well. I mean, on the side and the top. And then the CLP labels in the bottom. All of these things add up. So each sticker I've got is like 10p, 5p on the top, and then like a couple of p for the ones on the bottom for the CLP. Sometimes when we buy these candle suppliers, they will charge a delivery. So you need to factor that into the cost of everything as well. So add that into your wax maybe, or add that into your fragrance. All of these things do add up. If you're clever enough, you can buy things in such a bulk that you can negate the delivery and they end up being free. That's one more thing I would recommend whilst I'm thinking about it, is the bigger bulk you get, the cheaper things will be. So for instance, if I bought 50 wicks, it's going to be quite expensive, but I bought 1,000 wicks on Candle Shack, that's going to reduce the price down massively. Now in the beginning, it's very difficult to buy stuff in big bulks because you simply haven't got the money or the cash flow. But as my business has grown, I've gone from buying litres of oils to 5 litres of oils, and they drop the price down drastically. It just makes such a big difference. But the outlay compared to like 50 quid for a litre to 300 to 350 pounds for 5 litres is a big initial outlay, and it can affect cash flow. But if you can do it, buy in bulk, it will save money. And with some candle jars, you need to buy lids, but it's also worth shopping around. So for one of my reed diffusers, I buy the bottles, but the place that sells the reed diffuser bottles sells the lids as well. The lids are a bit naff and they're not very good. So I've shopped around and found a different place which sells really nice lids and they're cheaper. So it's a win-win situation. So don't rely on just buying everything from one place. So if you buy the jar and the lid, see if you can get the lids from a different place. It's just worth having ways to think about these things to maximize your cost. Just make life a bit cheaper because it will work out better in the long run. Packaging. This is something I think a lot of people forget about as well. Packaging does add up. So each box for my candle, if I can go and find one. Each box at the minute is costing me 60p. And then I wrap it in tissue paper, which is about 5p on tissue paper. And then I've got another label on here, which is another 10p. So that's about, we're getting up to £1 just for packaging, just for the box. So not only have we got a candle cost, we've got our packaging as well. So it's important that you get all of these costs put together. Now, some of you, when you're shipping them, might be buying boxes to ship them. I'm lucky enough that I buy enough stuff that I can ship them back in the boxes they come. So that saves a lot of money on that. I also get quite a lot of packaging supplies with the things I buy as well. So I can use that just to make my orders stay nice and intact. So there's lots of little bits you can do just to think outside the box to maximize your costs. Now, some of these things might not look as good as buying like a million of those little peanut things, but I do get a lot of them in some of the free things I get. And because I wrap everything up in tissue paper, it sort of protects it enough. I don't necessarily need too much packaging. But it is super important that you cost everything from the wick to the wax to the label to the box, just to understand where you are. And even the tape as well. Tape comes in. There's just so many little bits that you can forget about when you go about costing your candles. So you want to get the details right first, because if you don't know how much this costs to make, you're never going to know how much money you're going to make in the future. And then it all just becomes a bit of a guessing game. Moving on. We understand our cost of goods, we understand where we're getting our stuff from, and we're doing it as cheaply as possible whilst making the nicest thing possible as well. That's kind of what we want, is a happy medium of making the best thing we can possibly make, but also buying the cheapest things we can possibly do. I think a lot of candle makers, when they start out, they just go all in and buy loads of really nice stuff to make something that looks really cool, but it just isn't profitable sometimes. If it costs you £10-15 to make, you're going to have to sell that for a lot of money to make it back, and that sometimes just isn't realistic. People aren't willing to pay that much for a candle. Next, we're going to go down to pricing your candles correctly. Now, this differs for a lot of people, but generally the same rules apply, so we'll get into it. So the next step I would do is do some market research. Look for candles that are similar to the ones you want to make and see what they're selling for. What demographic are they going for? What sales channels are they using? And for me, most of my research is based on Amazon, and that's where I check my sort of pricing strategy. It could be different for you. You might want to be selling on Shopify, so perhaps your margins are different. Amazon is quite competitive, so I need to find the right place for me to fit in. You don't want to price yourself too cheaply. This will be a race to the bottom, and that's something we want to avoid. We don't want to sort of cheap until we get down to nothing, because we're just not going to make any money from that way. It might help you get sales initially, but it undervalues your hard work, and people won't respect the product as such. They'll look at it as like a cheap discount, sort of B&M, home bargains type thing, if you're just too cheap, and you're just not going to make any money. The aim of the game is to try and sell it for as much as possible whilst being realistic and attracting your target audience. You can't please everybody. That's what I've learned in my candle making journey. Even now, I get bad reviews. They do annoy me a bit, but I try not to worry about it. I know what I'm doing is good. It attracts a certain type of demographic and person that my brand speaks to, and it's just not going to please everyone. That's just how it's going to work. So work out who you want to attract and what you're going to sell to them. That's the main thing. So the general rule for selling is to double your cost for wholesale and to quadruple your cost for retail. This is roughly what I follow. For instance, one of my candles costs about £4 to produce, so my wholesale price for that is about £8. But when I sell my wholesale candles to like shops and stuff, I don't send them in the boxes, so I can knock off about 60p to £1 per wholesale price. So it means I can probably sell it for £7.50. If they order in a bigger bulk, then I might knock down the price even more, just to make it more of an attractive offer to them. For retail, my goal would be to sell this for about £15 to £16, quadrupling my sort of cost of goods, basically. This allows for just a buffer for everything. But there is some nuance to this as well. You might not necessarily be able to sell a candle for 4 times your goods. So for instance, if I did a bigger candle that cost me twice as much to make, and that's more like £8 to £10, realistically, I don't think I'm going to be able to sell it for £40. But this is where we can play with a sort of cash margin rather than working out your quadruples, basically. So for instance, if I have a candle which costs me £10 to make, I know I can probably sell it for £30, which is slightly more realistic. By the time I've got my fees taken into it, I'm still going to make £10 to £15 cash margin on that, which is still very, very good. So there's different ways to think about things, especially with Amazon, because it is competitive and you just need to work out your place in the marketplace. You don't want to price yourself too cheaply, because that's the race to the bottom. You want to price yourself fairly enough that you're making enough money. It's high enough so the perceived value is there, so people buy it with the notion that it's a handmade artisan product. It's not something cheap. And the thing is, people will pay whatever the perceived value is. This is something I'm still trying to get my head around, because I think a lot of us as candle makers or entrepreneurs, we know how much it costs to make something, so we undervalue ourselves so much. So it's something I'm slowly working on and beating that kind of imposter syndrome, but charging what I'm actually worth is the main thing. So I'm slowly increasing my prices until I find that sweet point where I'm not dropping in sales, people buy are happy, and I'm happy because I'm making enough money from it. But anyway, I've waffled on, we've gone to too many tangents here. So my minimum goal for each candle is 25% margin, and this is after everything. So that's after advertising, shipping, the lot. I'm currently selling my candles on Amazon for £16.50, which is averaging about 25% margin after all of my fees. Amazon do take a big cut. They take between £5.50 and £6 per candle. But for me, this works out quite well because that's next day delivery. I think if I was going to do first class post with, what are they, Royal Mail, that's about £4 a candle. So for Amazon to deal with the customer service using their platform and next day delivery, £6 per candle doesn't seem so bad. On the face of it, £6 does sound like a lot, but over the course and the ability for me to scale, because Amazon is my flywheel, it does work out very well. So for each candle, I make between £5 to £6 profit. But it does vary. Like I said, some of the oils are a bit more expensive and some of the other ingredients are a bit more expensive. So it's working out. But on average, it's about £5 to £6 per candle. So these are the things you kind of need to take on board. With Shopify, it does vary as well because there's not as many fees because it's my own platform. I've gone for a slightly different sort of pricing strategy on my website. And it might go against the grain of what most people do. Most people charge the same price for their candles on everything, and that just makes it black and white. So I'm trying something different and just seeing how it works. So what I've done for mine is I charge £12.49 for each candle on my website on Shopify, and then £2.99 for delivery. And this kind of brings me in line with that £16.50 fee that I charge on Amazon. But on the face of it, it looks like you're getting a good deal because you see the candle is £12.49, which is a pretty good price, I think, for a candle, which is handmade. But after I've done my costings, I know from each one I make £7 to £8 profit per candle before I've even added the delivery in. So the delivery is kind of like a non-negotiable. It's kind of there. I did think about, and this is what I did previously, just having everything at the same price and then including the delivery for free. I think it just makes it a more enticing offer going on my website, seeing the candle quite cheaply, adding it all to your cart, and then paying the delivery free. I have got free delivery over £25, which is something I think I will adjust to make it slightly more expensive. But my primary focus is really Amazon because that is the flywheel of my business. It is what allows me to scale. They do charge the most amount of fees, but it is the biggest platform of the world and the biggest shop in the world. And it just gives me the ability to get my product in front of thousands of people. And it just works. At some point, I do want to spend more time on Shopify, building up that sort of loyal brand and tribe of people. But for now, like I keep saying, Amazon is the main focus. So going back to my sort of shared screen, Shopify is my website for my friends. It builds a trust, it builds a reputation. The only problem with me is the constant shipping involved with sort of just going to the post office, packaging, doing all this stuff. I think, as I just said, Amazon is like my flywheel. It means I can scale due to the hands-off nature. Once I've sent my shipments to Amazon, they do all the work as well as sort of the advertising, the campaigns. Once the initial work is done, Amazon just takes care of itself. It's almost set and forget. Like once you've got your listing done, you've got your photos done, you've got your videos, you've got everything there, you've got your sort of Amazon advertising pay-per-click going. It kind of all just works in autopilot, really. I just need to tinker a little bit here and there, just make sure my shipments are up to date so I don't go out of stock. And it kind of just looks after itself. So that's the easy thing for me, is to grow that Amazon and build that thing. Now I do feel like I could charge more at the moment, but I'm trying to build like a loyal tribe, a family that supports what I'm doing, followers that sort of into it, that buy into the storytelling. It becomes an extension of them, part of their personality. I'm still making very good money and I'm building a brand. Building a brand is the most important thing for me at the moment. Building the tribe is crucial. You can make more products in the future, which have better margins, but you need the people there first, hence the brand building. Oh boy, do I go off some tangents. I just get excited about the business, the building, and that's kind of what I enjoy the most, the whole process of all of this. Like none of this actually feels like work to me. It just, I don't know, I love it. I love the grind, the chase, the build, the highs and the lows, and there's a lot of that, a lot of highs, a lot of lows. It's an interesting journey, this entrepreneurial thing. So I'm hoping I've actually covered some information that's useful in terms of costings. This is what I've been doing. It might not work for everyone. I'm just sharing exactly what I've been doing. Other people might suggest things differently. This has been working for me, and I've been making about 25% margin across Amazon. Shopify is probably more like 35%, maybe even 40% margin. So there is a better scope for profit on there, but it all varies and all differs. So hopefully you've enjoyed the video. Give it a like, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.